So a little bit of news out, kind of in the last 24 hours about the 2021 Lions Tour of South Africa. Obviously, still a long, long way away, and there's been a lot of talks about the rugby calendar, how things have been going. Possible talks of a League of Nations replacing the end of year tours and the June and November tours anyway. Kind of being squeezed in around rugby championship, Six Nations, that kind of thing. But I guess one thing that has not really been talked about too much is where do the Lions tours to Australia, New Zealand, and South Africa kind of fit into the greater scheme of the World Rugby calendar? Because being once every 4 years, it's not like a regular one that you can consider. I mean, it's regular in terms of it's 4 years, but it's not an annual event. It's kind of like a World Cup, even more different because it's a different kind of tour rotating between those teams. So if you're a New Zealand fan, you get to see them once every 12 years. But yeah, I mean, the main things that I noticed in this latest piece of news, and I'll see if I can chuck a link to one of the stories in the description. The Guardian's reporting on it, Stuff, New Zealand's reporting on it, a few other sites as well. Basically that the Gallagher Premiership, so the English competition, the top flight there, has sorted their calendar out going forward, and it's going to head well into the end of June. So it's been pushed out 1 week, I think, more than normal. So yeah, basically the English final for the Premiership is going to be 1 week before the Lions tour kind of gets underway. So there's not really going to be much of a buffer between end of season, especially for the guys playing for the top teams, who you would think in theory would make up a fair portion of the Lions squad. Having a mix of English and probably other players there as well from the other nations who represent the Lions. And also, I mean, we haven't even seen the Pro 14 schedule yet for that kind of time period, but yeah, essentially what they have kind of concretely put down is that the 21 tour is going to be 5 weeks. If you compare it to the tour last year of New Zealand, it was a week longer. It was 6 weeks. Even then, Warren Gatland kind of bemoaned the fact that he didn't really have enough time to get everybody ready. I think they were waiting on guys to play in finals. I think it was the Pro 14 and the Premiership finals from memory. And as was alluded to in one of the articles, when you looked at that first Lions game, when they hit New Zealand shores, they played a New Zealand Barbarians team, which should have been their easiest game on the tour. And they kind of scraped by in that game. Obviously, their performance levels kind of got better as the tour went on, because the guys got more familiar with each other. Tactics started to get embedded. Time was what they needed, and they eventually got it. But it is going to make things a little bit more difficult with the tour being cut back 1 week. I mean, you might say, well, 1 week, what's the big deal? Essentially, it's going to be down to 8 games now, and that includes the 3 test matches. So if you compare it again to 2017, 2017 was 10 games. So 3 tests and then 7, what do they call them? Not friendlies, but warm-up games, tour games, whatever you want to call it, midweek games. There was, I think, 5 games. Was it 6? 6 games, and then 1 game against New Zealand, and they had 1 more midweek game, and then the two tests. 6 weeks before the game proper is what they had in 17. So that's 6 games to kind of get things embedded and pick your first team and get everyone on the same page. Well, it can't be 6 if you've only got 8 games total in 2021. So it's only going to be 5 tour games and then the 3 tests. So it seems like one heck of a job. Just from a coaching point of view, I'm pretty sure Gatland said he wouldn't do it again. He's done it enough. Whoever takes it on is going to have a pretty mammoth task ahead of them, because that's not long. I mean, Gatland had a fair bit of experience. He's been in Europe for a long time now, and it was not his first Lions tour. So if anybody shouldn't be able to get the job done in 6 weeks, it was him, and even he found it difficult. So Whoever takes on that job for 2021, their job seems to have just gotten a fair bit harder. So yeah, like in 2017, there was the 3rd of June when they played the New Zealand Barbarians, and then the 24th of June when they played New Zealand in that first game. So it was pretty much the best part of a month to get ready. It's going to be more like a few weeks for whoever takes the job in 2021. Obviously, in terms of the hosting countries, like aside from just the rugby, where it's going to be harder for the touring side to get ready, the money's going to be a factor as well. Fewer games essentially is going to mean less revenue for the hosting nations. Australia, New Zealand, and South Africa do make a pretty penny when the Lions come to town. It is something they bank on. I can't remember what the figures were, and it's one don't quote me on it, but I seem to remember before the 2013 Lions tour, the ARU weren't doing that financially hot. I mean, they've never been in the best position since then, but I seem to remember that Lions tour was kind of a cash injection, almost like a bailout that kind of kept them able to be doing what they're doing. But it doesn't come around that often, once every 12 years, and it's about to be less than what it was. So, I mean, you could say boo-hoo. Those three nations will need to crunch the numbers a bit better to get better results out of the tour. But yeah, it's definitely going to have impact. I mean, these three nations are ones that are trying to retain as much talent as possible. Financially, that gets a bit harder without that kind of big cash injection they get from a Lions tour. If there's fewer games, less broadcast revenue, just less overall. Less rugby means less money. So yeah, I also did read in terms of player welfare, there's, I believe, going to be an enforced 10-week rest period after the Lions tour for the players who tour. So that's obviously a good news thing for them, because I think we all know that rugby players are playing a lot of rugby nowadays compared to what they used to play. So it's pretty hard on the body. These guys do need a bit of time to recover. So the clubs might not be too happy about that. But I guess we'll see how things go. So yeah, it's just a wee story I read. We're getting ready for New Zealand against Australia and Japan on Saturday. And obviously there's a World, even though it's more like a Sanzar 15 or Sanzar team playing Japan tomorrow. So that should be interesting. But in the meantime, I just thought that was an interesting story kind of from both sides. It's going to be harder on the Lions to get a result because less prep time. It's going to be harder on the midweek players, I guess, because the coaches have enough trouble giving everyone a game as it is. But at least those guys who maybe aren't in the test team, get to experience a bit of something. But if there's only going to be 5 games midweek, that doesn't give you much time to first get cohesion between the test players and then also give the midweek guys some game time. So it's a lot of change, I guess, even though it's only 2 games in 1 week. But change for the touring players, for the coaching staff, for the unions hosting. Less kind of coin in the coffers, which is always going to make their lives a bit more difficult. But I guess we'll see what happens. You guys let me know your thoughts on this. I'm assuming the Lions are still a viable option going forward. I know a lot of guys have talked about, wouldn't it be great if it kind of alternated between these 4 countries making the Lions and doing a tour, and then these 3 guys, or perhaps Argentina as well, forming some kind of Southern Lions thing going north. That would be awesome. But hey, that's just kind of a pipe dream. But I mean, what do you guys think? Is it viable in its current format? Is it getting squeezed too much? Is it going to be, I mean, if it's a Lions team that's not competitive, is it still going to have that same kind of awe about it when it comes? Because it's once every 12 years, it usually sells pretty well. But yeah, I'm just generally opening up the thoughts. You guys let me know what your thoughts are. How do you think it's going to go? What do you think the future for it is? And I guess we'll have a talk about it in the comments. I'll talk to you guys again soon. See you later.